What's up, y'all? Welcome to the Young Legends podcast, where we teach you the cheat codes of the game of life. I'm your host, Caption, aka Caption Red, and today's episode is a re-release of my first episode with comedian Mia Jackson. She is amazing. She has done so many things, even since I first aired that podcast episode, including having her own half-hour special on Comedy Central. So here's the interview. I hope you enjoy it. What's up, y'all? This is the Young Legends podcast. I'm your host, Caption, and I'm here with a very special guest today, Miss Mia Jackson. She is a New York-based comedian originally from Georgia. In 2017, she was selected as a new face by the Just for Laughs Comedy Festival in Montreal, and Atlanta's Creative Loafing named her the city's best stand-up. She has toured nationally with Amy Schumer and is a featured comic at festivals and clubs across the country. Her first stand-up set aired on October 2018 as part of Unprotected Sets, that's SETS, on Epix. Jackson has appeared on Nick Mom's Night Out, Viceland, Comedy Central's This Week at the Comedy Cellar, and was a semi-finalist on Season 9 of NBC's Last Comic Standing. She has appeared on Inside Amy Schumer and the movie Mother's Day. Mia, I am so excited to have you today. How are you doing today?
I am doing all right. Yes, I am always in the midst of allergies and all that good stuff, so I'm surprisingly not coughing right now. Right. But we'll see. We'll see how long that lasts.
Okay. Well, I mean, coughing is allowed, as long as as long as you don't get me sick somehow through this microphone technology, we're good.
I think you're safe. You're safe.
Fantastic. Now, you live in New York and you are now a full-time comedian, which is a really big deal. But you weren't always from New York. You're from Georgia. I believe you were from Athens as well. Can you tell us kind of the story of the journey of you becoming a comedian? Start wherever you want and to just kind of tell us how you got to where you are today.
I'll tell you the origin story. So I am from Georgia. I'm originally from Columbus, Georgia, and I ended up in Athens, Georgia because of my where I went to college. So I went to the University of Georgia, go Dog, woo, all that exciting stuff. And that's actually where I first got on stage. It was in Athens, Georgia, at a little bar that was downstairs. But prior to that point, I'd always kind of been fascinated by comedy. Like, even as a kid, I would watch a lot of stand-up. Like, I remember being 11 and 12 and watching people's half hours or whatever iteration of Comedy Central was out at the time. I can't remember if that's what it was actually called then, but it was some network that had a bunch of comedy, and I would sit there and just watch all the stand-up segments and would call my friends and my cousins, and we would talk about what we saw. And then by the time I got to high school, in marching band, and we would sit around and repeat everything that we had seen on Def Comedy Jam and Comic View and all that kind of stuff. So seeds were kind of planted early, and it didn't really dawn on me that, like, oh, that's a person's job. Like, that's like, I just, you just see these people fully formed performing, and you're like, oh, they just did this thing. And then you don't think about how they got to that thing. But I can remember seeing comedians come to my college, and then that was actually one of the turning points. About maybe a year or so after I graduated, I had a friend that was still in school, and she was on the student activities board. And student activities boards, those are usually who will book and hire the comedians. And they brought a comedian to the school, and she was like, you should come and you should meet him. And he was there with his manager. And I'm like, how did this happen? Like, how do you do this? And he was like, well, are you getting on stage? And I was like, no. He's like, yeah. So you need to be writing. You need to have a notebook in your hand, pen and pencil, microphone. That's all you need to be focused on right now. Because it's not a matter of somebody just throwing you on stage. And so that's kind of how it started, where I started taking notes, writing all this stuff down. And then maybe about a year and a half after that is the first time I actually got on stage. Like, I went to an open mic, and I was the only woman at the show, and I was there by myself. And I just remember one of the comics going, oh, you must want to be a comedian because you're here by yourself. You're not here supporting like your boyfriend is doing comedy. So what's happening here? So they were like, all right, why don't you come back next week? And then that's how I ended up on stage for the first time. So that's how it started. That's how the journey initially started. And then fast forward, I ended up going full time because the job that I had, we both hated each other at the same time. And then I just kind of jumped into the world of being a full-time comic. Yeah.
So it sounds like you got on stage, did your first open mic, and a year or two later you went pro, is what you're telling me.
I am not telling you that at all. This was not a year or two later at all. It was years later. years later.
Yeah.
So, it would be nice, and it's so many, probably just one of the misconceptions where somebody might see a person on TV and they're like, oh my God, like that person's doing comedy, but they don't know that person has probably been grinding it out, working in clubs for 15 to 20 years before you ever see them putting in the work.
Yeah. And was it the old saying goes, it takes 10 years to become an overnight success?
Pretty much. Yeah. Yep. It is very true. And I remember when the first few seasons of Last Comic Standing came out, and I remember a lot of people who didn't understand comedy, just civilians of comedy, they'd be like, well, I've seen some of those people before. I've seen that person on this show or that show. Like, these aren't just unknowns trying to do it. And a lot of comedians had to say, hey, this is not like an American Idol type show where you pluck someone from obscurity. That's not to say that those people haven't been singing all their lives as well, but it's just a completely different world, where, you could very possibly have an unknown singer that then ends up blowing up. But for a comedian, you have to have a lot of material. And so if you see somebody on TV when they were going, well, hey, these people are professional. Why is this person on this reality show? And it's like, okay, well, if you want to go see that person in a club and then you find out that they only have those 5 minutes of material that you saw on TV, you're going to be really mad. So you want someone that knows what they're doing. So it's a lot of experience before you see a television spot.
So you're telling me someone doesn't have to just come up with 10 minutes of material that they can do on TV and just become a comedian?
That is what I am saying, yes.
Yeah, you're just ruining dreams left and right. You're just killing.
Ruining, because people for real, like literally, that's what they think. They think that like you say, and especially I've run into this a lot with family members or, it'll be like, hey, I'm funny. I should get on stage. And I'm like, okay, go right ahead and go on. And you are not going to be pleased with the results just because you're the funny person at work or the funny person in your family. And like, it still takes a skill set to be able to get on stage and have setups and punchlines and then to do it for an extended period of time.
Okay. So now that you bursted the bubble of the public, tell me about the process of writing comedy and performing, because what we see, you're telling me basically is a bit of a finished product. So tell me about that process of developing that. Would they give you 4 or 5 minutes during Last Comic Standing, if that?
We did 3 minutes. It was 3 minutes when I did the show. And it was those 3 minutes that I did that still came from years, years of having performed before I actually got on the show. But just in general, even if you're not building a set for TV, if you're just building a set just to, hey, my goal, I want to be the MC at my local comedy club, and now I want to be the middle act, and I eventually want to be the headliner. The MC is going to do anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes. The middle act can do anywhere from 20 to 30, and then the headliner 45 to an hour. But the way you start building that material is you just start writing. And a lot of people have different processes, so I can't just say, oh, well, you need to sit down every day in front of the computer and write for 45 minutes, because some people do actually do that, and that's what works for them. But then you have other people who are like, oh, well, I have to actually go experience life. And then when I experience life, I'll get inspired and I'll write something. Then they might take that back to their computer or their phone or put it in their notes app and try to work out the material that way. And then I know some comedian friends of mine are like, oh, yeah, I kind of write from the stage. And again, but this comes after some years of experience, not in the early days where the people are like, oh, well, I have an idea and I'm just going to talk through this idea while I'm on stage. But in those early days of comedy, when you're learning how to write, and this is a setup, this is a punchline, this is a tag, this is all a chunk of material that's grouped together. When you're learning all of those things, just the building of material, you're just writing. And, however you are inspired to write, you start cataloging that info and you start putting it all together, and then you start going on stage. And then once you get on stage, you then have to start recording those sets. And then that's whether, you might be an audio person, you might be a video person, but whatever it takes for you to record that set and listen to learn your material. From that point, you go back and start making edits, and you start going back and making changes. So it's always just it's a process. It could take you 2 months to work out 2 bits, just depending on what you got going on.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of work. I'm sweating a little bit just hearing about it. But so when you say 2 months to work out 2 bits, how long are these bits that you're talking about generally? Like, how much comedy are we talking about here is what I'm saying.
It could really be like even a joke that's a minute and a half. If you're trying to work out all the kinks and the nuances and making sure that you want this thing tight of, 1 or 2 or 3 minutes, like that could take a month. That could take a month and a half, because you keep going up and then you try it again and you go and you try it again. And you're just trying to hone and read and move words around and switch things around, because the first time you do a joke, it might kill that night. And then you go up the next night and you get no response at all. And then you go up that third night and the joke kind of gets a so-so response. And then you do it a 4th time and you're like, oh, it worked again. But like all those 4 times that you've gone up, you should have recorded all 4 of those times so you could listen to, hey, well, what made it kill the first night? What made it not work the second night? Or why did it get a so-so response on the third night? And then you have a chance to go back and fix a lot of things. So yeah, it can take a couple of months to go, oh, I feel comfortable with this new 3 to 5 minutes that I just started working on. Yeah.
Wow. So timing, you don't just tell a joke and you just timed it impeccably and then made everybody laugh, and then you can't repeat that same process. I'm a little disappointed.
Right. Wouldn't it be so nice if you just went, I woke up this morning and I wrote a new hour's worth of material and all of it worked and it all kills. Like, that would be amazing, but it does not work like that.
Yeah.
It'd be so nice to be like, hey, I wrote 2-hour-long specials this week.
Yeah. And I heard that comedians at their very best and most prolific can drop a special once a year, but that's because it took them the entire year to work out that material on the road. And then eventually it's like 12 months of blood, sweat, and tears. And here you go. Here's 50 to 60 minutes of laughter, but my soul is in this thing.
Oh, absolutely. And it could be things that you started out that year that you're just like, this is what I'm going to talk about and this is what's going to go in my set. And then by the time you record it, it could be the first 20 minutes you were talking about at the top of the year might not even show up in your set at all, just because you dropped that material or decided it didn't fit with what you wanted to do in your hour.
No, that must hurt a little bit to be like, oh, I had this thing and now I'm not using it. I worked so hard on it. I worked months on this. I'm scrapping it. Oh.
But it definitely happens, because I've been around friends as they've got ready to work on specials. They were getting ready to record an album, and it's just a lot of, oh, what about this joke? Or should I take this one out? Or it might be something could happen with a parallel thought type of thing where you thought you had this great bit, then somebody drops a Netflix special and you're like, oh my God, that sounds exactly like the thing I was going to talk about. So now you take this out, so it shows all kind of stuff where you just, anything could happen. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or something that seemed timely is no longer relevant.
Wow. Yeah. I never really thought about that. Someone beating you to the punch of a joke.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. I had a friend actually say that she said she was so excited about some bit where she's like, oh my God, and I don't think I've heard anybody say anything like this before. And then she watched someone's Netflix special and she was like, no. oh no,
Ouch.
I can't do it at all now. Cause she's like, they're totally going to think I ripped this person off. And she was like, she had never heard of the comic before, had never seen them, and just so happened to be watching Netflix and was like, no, no, and no. So,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, it's tough. So tell me about your big break. Tell me about when you blew up, because that's what happens, right? You blow up and then, hey, look at me, world. Here I am.
Right. You have that magical one shot on television that then propels you into fame and fortune, and everyone knows your name and your face is on billboards. It happens every day, all the time. And I am also lying. That is not exactly what happens at all. But as far as as a big break, I mean, that's the thing. I think that's a really big misconception. And that's the thing that I've just found out, obviously, just in life and just as I've been doing comedy, where sometimes it's not just one thing, it's little small things that build up. Just, you do this one show. Now you got that credit. You do this one thing. Now you got this credit. So now for me, you could be like, hey, I didn't win last comic standing, but you know what? I can tell people I was on the show. So now I got something else on the resumes. For example, my college agents, I remember them going, oh, we're pitching you for a gig, but they really want someone that's been on TV. So now that I've done several different things on TV, they're like, hey, we got this person. She was on this show, and this show. So it's just a bunch of things that you're trying to get on the resume to help you, just get that visibility so that you can do what whatever your goal is, whatever you want to do. So it's just a series of little things all along the way. And I try to tell people all the time, don't think just because you got that one viral video or you got the one spot where somebody saw you on a show, like that doesn't mean that things are going to just change and happen overnight for you. And again, that's something I have to tell, the civilian people who aren't involved in comedy, but like with friends and family, where if I go, oh yeah, well, I'm going to be on, I got this Comedy Central special coming out in the fall. And people are like, oh my God, Comedy Central, that means everything's going to change because you got your special, and then you're like, well, no, like it's great. You're like, no, I'm excited. And this is a cool thing, but it's like, that's another thing along the way. It's just another step along the way where you're like, hey, I'm collecting all these credits and I'm doing all these things to help me along the way in my journey. Because it was the same thing with Last Comic Standing, where people are like, oh my God, you're on Last Comic Standing. So you know what you got to do now? Now you need to get an assistant and now you need to get this. And I'm like, slow down, like just calm down. I'm like, we don't even know what's going to happen on the show yet. So you need to relax. All right. Like you just need to calm down.
Wow.
Like just relax. So it's just a series of things. There's not always one big break. And I'm not saying that it doesn't happen, but it's rare that a one thing is going to propel somebody over to the top.
That's good to know. So it just sounds like as a comic, you just have to keep hunting and killing. That's the best analogy I can come up with right now. But like I guess you have to hunt and kill to eat. And it's just a cycle of that. And if you don't hunt, then you don't eat. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, look, you made it seem so much more dangerous. That's what's making me sweat. I'm like, I gotta go kill. No, it is a constant, in the early stages of it until you start picking up managers and agents and all that kind of stuff. It's a lot of you advocating for yourself and finding gigs and finding places where you can go and perform and doing well at those places. When you go to clubs that have open mics, a lot of times the clubs, like they're looking at the people at the open mic to go, oh, was this our next crop of people who may end up becoming hosts at our club? Okay, and now we've seen this person grow from a host to, oh, maybe now this person can feature. And now maybe this person is going out on the road, or somebody now calls that club and go, hey, can you recommend someone? As you're coming up in a club and you wanted to do well and be seen, that can lead to work as well, but it's still you just basically doing what you have to do and work hard for those things to even happen in the first place. But you're always trying to find work, trying to find, what's the next thing can I do? Can I apply to this festival? Is this festival the right festival for me to be applying to? should I move to this different city? And if I go to this different city, what shows do I get on there? So it's always constantly looking, constantly trying to find what's going to be the next things. But again, with the work involved as well. But yes, if you want to say we're going out looking to kill and hunt, then yes.
Yeah. And you're still doing open mics. That's one thing
Yeah.
No, it's funny. I was watching something with Kevin Hart, and he was talking about working out. He was like, me and Chris Rock were at the Comedy Store, and we were working out. And I was just like, oh, these guys too, huh? And I was like, they just show up and they're at the open mic. Yeah. It's like, oh yeah, we're just, we're just working out our material. That's what we're doing. I'm like, oh, okay, you too, huh? Wow.
Absolutely. It never ends. Not if you're a good comic, you are gonna always be doing it. I mean, it is, and being in New York, and same thing at the Comedy Cellar. You might look up one night and they'll be like, "Oh, Chris Rock is coming in," and they're like, "Oh, he's working on a new 20 minutes," or you might see they're like, "Oh, Chappelle dropped in tonight," or Amy Schumer dropped in. So you might see any of these people just coming in and hopping on the show because they're working out material, because at this point, when you're super famous, you're pretty much doing theaters and arenas, and you're not going to be able to drop in and go, hey, just put together an arena show tonight just to play around with people. You actually want to make sure what you're taking to that theater or arena show is good stuff. So you got to go work it out in clubs first.
That makes total sense. So in your career of doing comedy, you've been doing it for a long time. You've learned, I'm sure, a lot of life lessons that are very important to you. What is just one life lesson that just kind of sticks out to you where you're just like, people need to know this? This is, here's something I'm going to tell my kids, my grandkids, and everybody else who's young that's in my life. Here's what you got to know if you want to be successful.
Here are a couple of things. One, I learned very early in comedy. I remember I worked with a headliner who was just like, yeah, you know what? Best piece of advice I can give. He was like, don't be a jerk. And I was like, oh, that's very simple and it's very simple. It's very easy. He wasn't saying, hey, don't be yourself. He's just saying, hey, just don't be a jerk. Because one thing, and another comic also told me that I learned, which is also very true, is he would always tell me, you know what? One of my comedy friends would say, work gets work. Work gets work. And I used to be like what? Like when I first what do you mean? And he would go, well, you're probably going to get most of your work is going to come from other comedians, because if they see you at a show, then they might have a show somewhere, then they're going to invite you to come do this thing or that thing. And so I think those two kind of run hand in hand, like, hey, just be cool, don't be a jerk. And usually that coupled with you being funny and being solid and consistent, that will get you work and that will get you recommended for things. And so those are super important. And then another thing too, and it's really difficult to do, but it's an important thing to try your best to do, is just not compare either. Because that can kind of drive you crazy, because people do things at different timetables. Because I can remember sometimes in my early days being like, well, hey, that person's working at all these clubs all the time. Like, what are they doing that's different from me? Or what is this person doing? Or and I'm like, oh, then after you talk to the person and you hang out with these people, then you're like, oh, okay, that's why you're getting these things, because our work ethic is different. Maybe I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do as a person. And then even when you are doing everything that you're supposed to do as a person, it's still not a good idea to compare, just because you don't know what people's experiences are. Like, it could be someone who has a great, solid, hot 30 minutes that works at a comedy club with a headliner, and then they're the middle act for that weekend. And they might work with that headliner that says, hey, you know what? I want you to be my opener. Come with me on the road. But it might just be because you and that person that weekend happen to mesh, happen to connect. But then you could work with another headliner who is just like, who never talks to you at all that whole weekend. Like, hey, thanks, I'm here to do my job. And they never listen to your set. They never watch you. They never try to connect with you. So you can't be like, oh man, so-and-so just got picked up out of obscurity and now they're on the road with this one person. And it could just be, again, that weekend they just so happen to connect with that person in a way that you did not. So you just can't compare. I mean, it's natural to want to do so, but when people say, yeah, you really got to focus on the things that you're doing and what you can do better and just whatever you're doing in general, that's really some of the best advice that I've learned, because I realized like I stopped stressing out so much, and I would be like, let me stop trying to keep up with what is this person doing? What's this person doing? Like, it makes your life a lot easier when you are just focused on what you're doing and the things that you can control.
Absolutely. And that's something that I feel like not just young people, but everybody should kind of take into heart. I heard a quote that said, comparison is the thief of joy. And really, it's one of the quickest ways to really not be grateful and content with what you have going on. And all you're doing is, look at that guy's house is bigger than my house. Oh, forget this house.
Yeah.
That's not a good way to live. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, not at all. Not at all. I can even remember as a kid, being like that with my, I remember my dad telling me one time, just like, look, the phrase, the keeping up with the Joneses. And he was just like, listen, he said, I'm going to just tell you right now, you might look at another family, you might go, man, like everybody in that family, like the parents are driving the nicest cars, the kids have the best clothes, and they have this and they have that. But you don't know what they did to get those things. It could be a situation where, they are financially in a good place, or they could also be in debt because they're trying to look good to these people who don't even care what they got going on. I remember him telling me that really early, like, just kind of pay attention to, what you're doing to get the things that you've gotten. So you just don't know what other people have going on. And like you said, you can drive yourself crazy. And I've had comedy friends that will have these long chats sometimes where they're like, well, look at this person, and I watched this person, and how did this person get this over me? And I'm just like, that is going to drive you crazy. And it's not to say that you're not going to have moments where you get a little down sometimes, because I mean, it's a hard business, but like, I know some people where that's all they focus on, and nothing good comes of it for their career because they're so mad being, they get bitter, watching other people, and they could be doing some of those same things themselves, but they're so used to watching everybody else, they can't even focus on themselves at that point.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's a rough goings. And also just kind of going back to that family analogy, that family might all hate each other.
Right,
and
exactly.
They don't speak. And
right.
They have all the money, but none of the love. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, they look great, but they can't stand each other. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you are absolutely right, because it says I've seen it plenty of times.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. All right, so here's what I'm going to do. We're getting close to the end of the conversation, and I do this thing called freestyle rapping. Kids seem to like it. So I'm going to freestyle wrap up this conversation, and then we're on the tail end. So Hold on. Alma mater, UGA, right? New York City.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
and then, comedy. Here we go. Let's go. Let's see. Yo. Here we go. Yo, I'm just flowing. Something that I'm knowing. You got to put in work every single day. Blood, sweat, and tears. A whole bunch of years. If you want to go pro, that's what I'm saying. Comedy is work. Don't be a jerk. Don't go berserk. Stay on the road. Stay on the stage. And that's what I say every single day. It's like UGA, we gotta go dogs, and that's what I say. Yo, it's your job to come straight through and build your career real up in here. Write down some notes, that's how you get really quite dope, and that's what I say. You wanna bring that hope to your freaking family, you gotta put it in, and that's what I say. You're here to get a win with Mia Jackson. Hear me cause I'm rapping, spit a freestyle, spring up in action, that's what I'm saying. Freestyle flows, so if you don't know, act like you know. All right.
What?
All right. There it is.
Yes. I love it.
I was only able to. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I got scared. I thought I was going to have to be, I thought I was going to get asked to participate. Thank goodness.
Yeah. I like hype people on the other end. Be like, yeah, woo.
I was just like, I'm not going to, this is his thing. I don't get involved. I just watch.
There it is. So. Very cool. Well, it's been super enlightening to talk to you, Mia. You are a true inspiration, one of the few professional stand-up comedians out there just killing it in the game. You're on the road often, probably in a city near the audience sometime soon. All they got to do is get a fake ID. So kids, go get your fake IDs right now so you'll be ready. Yeah, but
we're not endorsing fake IDs.
Yeah, exactly. Good times. So a couple things. As a person who has dreams, I'm proud of you. Just going after it and doing it big and going on the road and being in movies and being on the road with Amy Schumer. That's no small deal. Last Comic Standing. Wow. It's just, I'm really, hopefully you're blushing on the other end. That's my only point of.
Look, I'm over here going, I'm like, oh, stop it. Go on. Stop it. Go on. No,
you forgot about that one other thing. No.
Right. There's so much.
Yeah, indeed. So a couple things. Obviously, we want people to see you, to know more about you, and just promote anything that you're up to. But just for the record, it's MIA Jackson, Mia Jackson.
Yeah, Mia Jackson.
So first off, what have you been up to that you kind of want to promote? Anything in particular?
Let's see. I mean, like I said, just look out in the fall of 2019 for the Comedy Central half hour. So that's coming out in the fall. And then and actually this past fall, November 2018, I had that thing that came on Epix. So if you have Epix, and I think you can still get free trials, you can go and watch that. And other than that, like I'm just out and about on the road. And there's actually another thing that I did that got filmed for Comedy Central. It was just under a working title, but that's supposed to be coming out at some point as well. You'll see me roaming around New York doing a show. They followed me for a day, just in my day in the life. So that's coming out at some point.
Wow. So two things.
Yeah.
2 things on Comedy Central coming out.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. Okay. That's pretty fancy. I'm not gonna lie. That's pretty fancy.
Yeah, I feel good about it,
Yeah. Indeed. Oh, another thing, social media. How and where can people connect with you on social media? Go through all of them. If you want to throw out your Pinterest too, we'll see what
Well, let's just start with the ones that let's see, I am on. I do have a Facebook fan page, which is just facebook.com, and then comedian Mia Jackson. And obviously, I have a website, miajackson.com, and then I am on Instagram and Twitter at Mia Comedy.
Very cool. All right. Well, hopefully everybody connects with you there and they check you out coming out soon. Thank you so much for dropping all that knowledge, Mia. You are fantastic. You're hilarious. Oh, they can find a bunch of your videos on YouTube. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that I did on Laughs TV that's on YouTube. So yeah,
absolutely.
Find some of that stuff. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, well, go check that out too. Mia Jackson, you're fantastic. Keep doing what you're doing. Reach for the stars, and we're proud of you.
Thank you so much. Thanks.
Okay. Awesome. Fantastic. All right. Thanks so much.
All right. Thanks. All right. Bye.
All right. Thanks. Bye.
All right. So that's the end of the interview. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned a lot about comedy, life, and success in general. Now, if you're enjoying this podcast, please remember to hit subscribe. And if you would give it a rating and review in Apple Podcasts, I'd highly appreciate that. All right. Hope you're well wherever you are. And until next time, peace. Bye, young lady.